The weaponization of CISA, government agencies, the cybersecurity agency that's supposed to protect us from disinformation, was actually working with big tech to censor us, to silence us, to step all over our civil rights and our First Amendment freedom of speech. This report comes out from the Judiciary Committee and the Weaponization Committee out of the United States House of Representatives, saying that CISA, the agency, so-called cybersecurity in quotes, colluded with big tech and disinformation partners, third parties, to censor Americans. Now, we knew this was going on as a result of the Twitter files. Thankfully, Elon purchased the whole company and was able to share and shed light on that. But this was written June 26, and here is a nice quote to start us off with, one from Jen Easterly, CISA Director, November 10, 2021. Here's what she said. One could argue we're in the business of critical infrastructure. And the most critical infrastructure is our cognitive infrastructure, our minds. So building that resilience to misinformation and disinformation, I think, is incredibly important. So they're going to protect us and our cognitive infrastructure. The article executive summary tells us the First Amendment recognizes that no person or entity has a monopoly on the truth. Truth today can become misinformation tomorrow. Labeling speech misinformation or disinformation does not strip it of its First Amendment protection. And as such, under the Constitution, the federal government is strictly prohibited from censoring political speech. The government may also not use third parties to bypass First Amendment and conduct censorship by proxy. Outsourcing it. Having FBI agents like Elvis Chan delete this, delete that, sending messages over to Twitter, Google, YouTube, and saying, hey, we've got some concerns about this bad tweet or this bad YouTube video. This might be medical misinformation. This might be election misinformation. Can you delete it? And they all did it, but it was all initiated and instigated by the feds. That is censorship by proxy. It's outsourcing their censorship because they can't do it. The government in Congress, the Committee on the Judiciary and Weaponization have been conducting an investigation, and they have a little bit more detail for us. They say, founded in 2018, CISA was supposed to guard against cybersecurity threats. But unfortunately, like a cancer, CISA metastasized into the nerve center of the federal government's domestic surveillance and censorship operations on social media. And you know what happened in 2016? Trump won. So they needed to do something about this for the next one. 2018, CISA's formed. By 2020, CISA routinely performed and reported social media posts that spread disinformation to the various social media platforms. We covered a ton of that here. By 21, CISA had formal dis, and malinformation a team. They just made it up. In 2022 and 2023, in response to criticism of CISA and their unconstitutional behavior, CISA attempted to camouflage its activity, claiming to be purely informational. But the report says that's not true at all. Instead, CISA is, quote, working with federal partners to mature a whole of government approach to curbing misinfo and disinfo. The whole government has to take care of our cognitive infrastructure. CISA considered the creation of Anti-Misinformation Rapid Response Team. In other words, a contingent of the Democratic Party, the FBI, the DOJ, whoever's in charge, in this case it's the Bidens, they would be able to respond to anything that the government deems to not be true, capable of literally physically deploying across the United States. All right, so these are not just people on their laptops. They are going to come to your locale like shock troopers. CISA moved its censorship operation to a CISA-funded nonprofit after CISA were sued in federal court along with Biden, implicitly admitting its censorship activities are unconstitutional. So they moved it around. Now CISA wants to use the same nonprofit as its mouthpiece to avoid the appearance of government propaganda. Members of CISA's advisory committee agonized that it was only a matter of time before someone realizes we exist and start asking us about our work. Congress is now asking. They say the Committee on Weaponization is responsible for investigating this. In accordance with this mandate, staff will report on violations of the First Amendment, but our work is not done. CISA has still not adequately complied with the subpoena. Much more work is necessary. We're going to continue to investigate them and other social media platforms. And you can see the rest of this here is giving us a detail on what the table of contents looks like, what the rest of this report contains. It says that CISA has become a domestic intelligence and speech police agency. CISA colludes with third parties to circumvent the First Amendment and censor by proxy. CISA has attempted to conceal its unconstitutional activities and remove evidence of wrongdoing, obstruction, insurrecting American democracy digitally. They have some emails saying that DHS was eager to cement a domestic intelligence agency. In a May 2021 email, former Assistant Secretary at DHS sent an email. Says, off the record, some at DNI are not big fans of CISA. I'm sure that could be fixed when you get a new director because the new DNI trusts you. But I personally think it should be moved to DHS because of the connectivity to domestic and social media companies. And while that's likely to be controversial, we now know how to secure elections, but we do not know how to deal with misinformation. Amazing. What an amazing admission. We now know how to secure elections. We didn't know how to do that in 2016 when we lost, but now we know. And we do not know how to deal with information, so the center would be a step in the right direction. It would be great for Department of Homeland Security to own it. They want to bring in CISA into DHS because of their domestic surveillance capabilities. And they were all colluding to do this. They all told us this was for our own safety. They were censoring us so that they could win elections. And when we scroll down to the conclusion, we see that Barack Obama even said something like this ridiculously. He says, silencing those who disagree with us is a sign of weakness, not strength, and it won't lead to progress, as he and his party install the greatest censorship apparatus the world has ever known, maybe outside of China. Although it could be more pernicious than China. We think we have free speech. They know better. In 2019, CISA's chief counsel claimed we're not law enforcement, we're not intelligence. Yeah, that's accurate in theory. CISA is not law enforcement, and they are not authorized to act as intelligence. But in practice, that's exactly how CISA behaved, arrogating itself to the authority to conduct surveillance of Americans on social media. CISA expanded its unconstitutional practice. It developed a censorship apparatus spanning multiple organizations in order to facilitate censorship. There is no constitutionally viable authority to allow them to do this. It violates the First Amendment, disregards the separation of powers, and other agencies are prohibited from doing this. Suzanne Spalding, the former CIA legal advisor, said it was only a matter of time before someone realizes we exist, so they knew better. Their repeated violations and their attempt to cover up will not rectify the damage that they've caused. CISA must be reined in, and Biden administration's whole of government approach to social media censorship must be stopped. Every American has the right to express his or her opinion online. The government doesn't have the right to nullify the First Amendment guarantees. A free and democratic society is impossible under a government that acts as the sole arbiter of truth. And so to better form these efforts and to end censorship, the committee will continue to investigate CISA and other parts of the Biden administration's agencies, along with the social media companies. So these people, they knew exactly what they were doing. They were doing it intentionally. They were doing it because, well, it won them the election. Every time they could censor somebody on the internet, that's like going up to their front yard and removing their yard sign. It's like putting tape on their mouth when they're showing up at a protest. It's censoring them. They just were doing it digitally. They knew what they were doing was wrong and illegal, and our government just motors on. We've got some people in Congress who are looking into this, but every single person who is responsible for this violated Americans' civil rights, and there should be repercussions for it.